Okay, welcome to video 5. This one here is going to look at People's Democracy and Burntollet Bridge. So it's events at the start of 1969 that really do lead to the start of the Northern Ireland Troubles. Okay, so let's have a wee look and see exactly what happened during these events. First of all, just a bit of context. As you know from before, in 1968 there was marches going on across Northern Ireland, and in October 1968 one big march in Derry, London Derry, was involved confrontation with the police, and that was broadcast across the world. Tensions were increasing, marches were increasing, counter marches by unionists and loyalists were happening, and things started to really get quite bad, quite serious. And the 5-point programme was forced to be introduced by O'Neill. This was hoped to stop maybe marches to try to alleviate some of the situation. However, O'Neill came on onto television and made an impassioned speech. He realised that things are going to go one of two ways. He basically says, look, this Northern Ireland is going to be continually torn apart by riots and demonstrations and regarded by the rest of the United Kingdom as a political outcast, or do you want it to be a happy and respected Northern Ireland in good form with the rest of the United Kingdom? He's basically saying, look, you know what, we are now at a crossroads. If we continue with these marches and counter demonstrations, it's going to lead to more tensions, it's going to lead to violence, and it could in fact lead to civil war, and a lot of people dying. So this speech was made around just before Christmas time, definitely December 1968, and it really did make people sit up and listen. NICRA decided, you know what, we're going to we're going to accept status quo for the minute. They're going to accept the 5-point programme as a first step, and they agreed to stop marching. Sort of Catholic leaders agree with that as well too, and unionists agree that this is perhaps a start of a way forward. Okay, so that's the Crossroads speech. However, there's one group of people who are determined not to abide by this here, and they're called People's Democracy. They're a lot more radical, and they're based of a lot more students, a lot younger supporters, so students, more radical group than NICRA, and they believe that the 5-point programme doesn't go near far enough for them. They wanted more. They were also very unhappy about the attack in October 1968 on NICRA marchers in Derry, and they were determined to have their own march and keep marching. So they were led by Bernadette Devlin and Michael Farrell. Bernadette Devlin definitely becomes quite a significant character in the Troubles which is to follow. So they, just to reiterate, they were prepared to keep marching. This is against the advice of the Catholic Church and many nationalists. They were prepared to keep marching and keep the pressure up. NICRA had stopped marching after the 5-point programme was promised in order to try to calm the situation, and they really criticised the People's Democracy's attempt to keep the thing going. So what were the difference? Well, People's Democracy demanded one man, one vote. They demanded that then, right on that time. They wanted free speech for all. They wanted an end to gerrymandering, fair boundaries agreed. They wanted a complete end to Special Powers Act. Jobs were given based on who's best qualified, not on religion. Houses were to be allocated based on need. So quite similar to the NICRA's demands, but they wanted they wanted it delivered fast, and they wanted to deliver directly. So as we've seen, People's Democracy were unhappy about the limited results of the 5-point programme agreed with O'Neill, and what they were determined to do was to keep marching, and they announced their intention to march from Belfast to Derry from the 1st to the 4th of January 1969. So Belfast down here all the way up to Derry up here. Okay, you can probably guess, looking at the colours, what's going to happen. Okay, so you look at these mostly orange, mostly unionist areas. They're going to have to pass through these areas to get to Derry up here. Okay, and that's going to be regarded by some as highly provocative and in danger of leading to tensions and troubles. Okay, alright, so again, this was criticised by many people. Nationalists, Catholic Church, all criticised their intention of doing this, but off they set, and they decided to go across to Derry. Okay, across the route though, they were met with counter protests, as you'd expect. Ow! And yes, around Burntollet, around this section here, they were attacked. They were attacked by stones. They were ambushed by stones thrown by groups of loyalists who were waiting for them. Okay, and that was at Burntollet Bridge. Alright, so initial reactions to the action held in the march. Well, groups like NICRA and many nationalist groups believed that People's Democracy should not go on this march. Things were too tense. They believed it would only stir trouble unnecessarily, so they didn't want them to actually go from the national side. Unionists, they thought it was designed to annoy Protestants, designed to provoke them. They believed People's Democracy was just the IRA in disguise. They wanted to unite Ireland, and they were prepared to try and stop this march. So what happened at Burntollet Bridge? So the march went ahead, was given a police escort. However, as predicted on the fourth day of the march, as it neared its destination, Derry, Londonderry, it was attacked in an ambush by loyalists at a place called Burntollet Bridge. Stones were thrown by loyalists who had gathered on the hillsides, and many of the protesters were injured by these stones. What made things worse was the police reaction was recorded as them either running away from the marchers or doing little to offer them protection. And it was also clear from film footage later that many of those actually involved in throwing the stones were off-duty B specials, and they were involved in the violence itself. So these are pictures from the march. I'm going to show you, or you can see the next video as well, which is from the scene itself. But these were broadcast across the country and led to a lot of anger amongst nationalists. So led to accusations of unionists letting it happen or being actively involved in it, especially the police force. To make matters worse, that night in Derry, many houses were also attacked by the police, and both events deeply angered Catholics. Okay, so that good feeling, or limited good feeling, around Christmas time 1968 was gone in in days by what happened here. Okay, it led to a real increase in tensions again. So what are the reactions? Well, NICRA itself, they were enraged. They felt the violence had proved little had actually changed Northern Ireland. They restarted their marching, which again led to violence. O'Neill himself was under huge pressure. Things looked to be getting beyond his control. He started the Cameron Commission to look into the causes of the trouble. This reported back that there was causes, as you know. He also calls an election. He decides that, you know what, I'm going to call an election, I'm going to get more support here, and that's going to help the moderate cause. And he hoped that the more extremes would lose votes. However, that's a big gamble, and as you know, it didn't really pay off. Okay, and O'Neill's unionist opponents, well, opponents of O'Neill like Faulkner began to speak out against him. They had had enough. They thought he was losing control of the situation. Nationalists were gaining the upper hand, and 12 OUP MPs openly called for O'Neill to resign. So he's having a bit of a mutiny here, which is going to lead to him being really undermined as well too. However, he doesn't resign. What about the election then? So this is called the Crossroads election. Again, it's based on what he sees as being the Northern Ireland at a crossroads between peace and war. And in this election, he really hopes that the moderates on both sides are going to come out and support him. But he was in deep trouble by February 1969. There's marching madness, so civil rights marches by NICRA and People's Democracy were stepped up after the violence at Burntollet and Derry. This led to more tension and riots. Nationalists were deeply frustrated by this stage. Even moderate nationalists were angry at the violence that they had seen in the civil rights marches. Unionists were unhappy because they felt a lot of the publicity was going to nationalists. They weren't happy of being forced to give up things in the 5-point programme, and O'Neill was under pressure to resign from people within his own party. His party as well was deeply divided. So you had conservatives who didn't want any change whatsoever, and you had more liberals who were prepared to support his reforms. So why did he call an election, and what on earth would he call an election at this time for? Well, he thought it was the only way for him to move forward. He really hoped that moderates, middle class Catholics and Protestants would actually vote for him, and therefore show that they agreed with his policies and were willing to progress and help modernise Northern Ireland. This he hoped would silence his critics like Craig, Paisley and Faulkner. And he showed this in his Crossroads speech. And this is his Crossroads speech. Quite an impressive speech, it has to be said. Laying out the two different views of what Northern Ireland could actually be. Okay. Alright, so What were the results? Well, the results of the Crossroads election were not what he was actually wanting, and it was very disappointing for him. His Unionist Party lost support. There's no way they were going to lose the election because they've got, they're the only Unionist party, so they're not going to lose, but they did lose support. His party was also clearly split down the middle. Ian Paisley, a hardline Unionist, won a lot of support and even challenged O'Neill in his own seat. He actually challenged O'Neill, the sitting Prime Minister, and he got to within 1,400 votes of unseating the Prime Minister, O'Neill himself. That's a very small amount in terms of electoral votes. Catholic support for O'Neill just did not materialise. Nobody's going to vote for the OUP with everything that's happened in the civil rights marches, and there's lots of calls for O'Neill to resign, including members of his own cabinet, including Faulkner. But O'Neill determined to stay on, see the thing through, and he stays on. Okay, however, there are lots of things that are counting against him, and by April 1969 he's forced to resign. Why April then? Well, obviously the election results led to a lot of pressure put on him to resign. His party was deeply divided. Ministers like Faulkner were actively asking him to resign. Catholic frustration, they didn't feel they were getting what they wanted, so they weren't really going to help out in this case. Street violence was continuing across Northern Ireland, but out of everything, what really got rid of O'Neill was a bomb explosion, or a series of bomb explosions that took place. Now these were in water installations near the Silent Valley, and it was actually carried out by loyalists. People know this now. It was actually carried out by loyalists. Back then though, this wasn't known to be the case, and people started to suggest straight away, this is the IRA, look what you've caused, O'Neill, you've caused the IRA to come back, and now we're in trouble. So he was blamed for this here, and this was the bomb that literally blew him out of office. So he had to resign following these bomb explosions. Who do you expect to get put into place? Probably Faulkner, but it's not the case. So O'Neill stands down. He's not replaced by Faulkner. He's replaced by his own cousin, James Chichester Clark. Okay, and this is James Chichester Clark here. So again, it looks to be the same sort of problem again, where the Unionist hierarchy are actually choosing the posh people at the top. So despite the family ties, Chichester Clark had been a big critic of O'Neill. He had resigned and protested O'Neill, granting one man, one vote. He himself proved, however, to be a very poor Prime Minister, especially in times of mounting trouble. He was appointed from the same background as O'Neill. He was older, less in touch, and was just as unable to deal with the rising trouble as O'Neill himself. From criticising O'Neill's reforms previously, he actually then began to suggest that O'Neill's timing was wrong for them. Then he began to try and continue with the same reforms. So he went all the way back on what he actually proposed in the first place. By that stage, though, the cat was out of the bag, and things were kicking off in Northern Ireland in terms of the troubles. Okay, hopefully this helps. So, just in case, is he a good or bad leader? O'Neill did begin to modernise Northern Ireland and was succeeding in doing that. He created 35,000 jobs, better infrastructure, he attracted foreign companies, he created a new relationship with the Republic of Ireland, he built new relationships with Northern Ireland's Catholic community, he passed the 5-point programme, which is the first step towards civil rights. He was weakened by hardline Unionists like Ian Paisley, who would never compromise, and more militant nationalists like People's Democracy, who increased tensions to boiling point, and his own party, who were actively pulling to remove him. The bad points though, there were still economic problems, the limitations there. Okay, lost 20,000 jobs. He kept that visit by Lamass secret, which led to a lot of mistrust in his cabinet. His relationship with the Republic was only over small things like electricity, not in big political matters. He gave Northern Ireland's Catholic community perhaps too many hopes that he couldn't actually deliver on. The 5-point programme was forced through by the British Prime Minister. It wasn't, didn't come from O'Neill directly. In fact, O'Neill thought it didn't go far enough. The policies of the government still remained unionist, like the University in Coleraine, New City at Craigavon. These all counted against O'Neill as well too. Okay, so I've given those all out that you can actually use. Okay, I really hope that is useful, and that will actually take us right up to the start of the Troubles then, and British troops coming in. Okay, thank you.